Anesthesiology has been a highly sought after specialty, not just for doctors, but also for nurses and other members of the healthcare team. But within anesthesiology, there are actually several career options, so which one is right for you? Today we'll explore the differences between anesthesiologists, certified registered nurse anesthetists, and certified anesthesiology assistants. We'll discuss everything from training to responsibilities to what you guys are probably wanting to know, the salaries. And for all the salary information in this video, I'll be using Merit, a free salary sharing website for doctors, NPs, PAs, CAAs, and other healthcare providers. More on Merit later on in the video. Without further ado, let's get into it. First off, for those of you guys who are new here, my name is Sean Anderson and I'm a second-year anesthesiology resident in San Diego, California. For many students deciding on a career in medicine, anesthesiology is a very attractive choice. To start, anesthesiology is actually one of the road specialties, which is basically an acronym for the specialties that have the best work-life balance in medicine, and these include radiology, ophthalmology, anesthesiology, and dermatology. So what's so good about the lifestyle in anesthesiology? First off is the predictable schedule and work hours, at least compared to other specialties in medicine. In non-academic and non-trauma hospital settings, you're essentially doing a lot of elective cases, which just have a lot more predictable hours. It's the anesthesia team's responsibility to manage the patient in the perioperative setting, which means before, during, and immediately after surgery. Once the patient recovers from anesthesia, our role is essentially fulfilled in most scenarios. So as an anesthesiologist, your day essentially ends when your case list ends. Now, if being on call is mandatory, then you have to worry about that as part of your schedule as well. But if you're not on call and you're off duty, then off duty really does mean off duty. You don't have any responsibilities typically. Compare that to fields like medicine or surgery, where you are still the primary team for your patients at any given time, and being off duty might still result in you getting phone calls and pages about patients. So let's talk about compensation for a second. Anesthesiology is consistently ranked one of the highest paying medical specialties. This kind of makes sense because surgery is essentially one of the largest sources of revenues for hospitals, and all of those surgeries need anesthesiologists. And so this demand is reflected in the compensation. As far as the subject matter in anesthesiology, it's a really fun combination of pharmacology, physiology, and hands-on procedures. To be a competent anesthesia provider, you really have to know the human body and its physiology. Because I promise that you will find out someone's physiology once they go under surgery. Because surgery is not benign, and your body reacts in so many different ways when it goes under surgery and is under anesthesia, and you have to be ready for anything. You also need to have such a deep understanding of pharmacology because we rely on our medications to get you through your surgery safely. And it's not just the medications we give in the operating room, but you also have to know about the medications your patients are taking and how that might affect your anesthetic care. A really good example of this is two of the pressors that we use every single day in the operating room, phenylephrine and ephedrine. You might be wondering, if a patient's blood pressure gets low, which one of those medications to use. And if you don't know that phenylephrine causes a reflexive bradycardia when you administer it, you might choose to give that to a hypotensive patient with a heart rate in the 40s rather than ephedrine, which would help your blood pressure and your heart rate. That's just a very small example of the many decisions you have to make when it comes to pharmacology management every single day. Another reason people like to go into anesthesia is because of the procedures. You're dealing with airways, lines such as central lines, art lines, IVs. You are doing regional anesthesia with epidurals and spinals. It's honestly a lot of fun, and that's one of my favorite things about the field. And that brings me to my next point, which is the immediate gratification a lot of anesthesia providers get from their jobs. In anesthesia, you are essentially the patient's guardian angel. You are literally keeping them alive during surgery. While the surgery team is rightfully focused on the procedure, you are focused on making sure that the patient is stable. As an anesthesia provider, there are immediate and tangible outcomes to your actions. For example, if you have a patient in acute hypoxic respiratory failure that you're able to intubate and start helping whatever respiratory pathology is helping, you have that immediate gratification. When you need to place a line and you get the line in, very, very satisfying. Or when you give a medication during surgery, we have so many monitors that you typically see an immediate response. This is in contrast to a lot of primary care specialties where a lot of your management is happening chronically and over long periods of time, where you might not necessarily feel that gratification immediately. Now that I've convinced you guys to pursue the best specialty in medicine, totally not biased by the way, let's actually talk about the differences between anesthesiologists, CRNAs, and CAAs. So let's start with anesthesiologists. Anesthesiologists are doctors, either MDs or DOs, that have gone to medical school and completed additional training to specialize in anesthesiology. These are the highest level anesthesia providers. As such, they practice independently or they lead a team of anesthesia providers, such as a team of residents, CRNAs, and CAAs. In the anesthesia care team model, one anesthesiologist can actually supervise multiple CRNAs or CAAs or residents and have multiple rooms going with surgeries at the same time. Although the anesthesiologist can delegate the tasks of administering anesthesia and procedures to the resident CRNAs and CAAs, they are ultimately the one responsible for that case. How this looks in the real world is essentially the anesthesiologist and whoever's working with them will discuss the patient's care plan, see the patient, and then they're both typically in the room for induction, which we tend to kind of compare to taking off an airplane, which is one of the most important parts of anesthesia care. If things are gonna go wrong, and a lot of the time, anesthesia is very safe these days, it's usually during induction or emergence, which is when patients come out of anesthesia. And the anesthesiologist, of course, tends to be there for that as well. Now, during anesthesia, if everything is stable, the anesthesiologist will come in, check on things, make sure things are okay. They remain available in case something is going wrong and the CRNA, CAA, or resident needs to get a hold of them. But other than induction and emergence, they are typically more in a supervising role. If things get very complex, then of course the anesthesiologist is gonna glove up and be ready to step in to help. Now, this might sound nice initially when you think about the anesthesiologist getting to kind of just pop in and out, but don't forget, a lot of the times they're seeing 2, 3, maybe 4 rooms at a time. And so you're doing that for all these rooms, and then you have the liability for every single one of those cases on your shoulders. Some anesthesiologists prefer just to run their own cases, and some actually really like working in the anesthesia care team model and overseeing anesthesia care with multiple other providers. That all depends on you. Now, to be an anesthesiologist, you have to go through 4 years of undergrad, 4 years of medical school, 4 years of residency, plus maybe any fellowship that you want to do. Some of the anesthesia subspecialties include addiction medicine, cardiac, critical care, hospice, obstetrics, pain medicine, and several other really awesome subspecialties. In short, if you want to be the most knowledgeable person in the room with the most training and experience, then anesthesiologist is the way to go. As a side note, because anesthesiologists are physicians, they can actually prescribe medications outside the perioperative period, which is something that CRNAs and CAAs cannot do. All right, let's move on to CRNAs. CRNAs are nurses who have completed additional training in anesthesia. They can administer all the same medications that anesthesiologists can within the perioperative period. They can also perform many of the same procedures, such as intubations, central lines, ART lines, IVs. But depending on the state or their specific work environment, their scope of practice can actually vary. In some states, CRNAs can practice completely independently, whereas in other states, they have to practice within the anesthesia care team model. Also, depending on where they practice, CRNAs might be able to do high complexity cases such as liver transplants, whereas in other places, they might work more in routine surgical procedures. Now, to become a CRNA, you must first earn your Bachelor of Science in Nursing, which is a 4-year degree path. And then once you're a licensed registered nurse, you must complete at least 1 year of working in an ICU. However, most competitive applicants tend to work in the ICU for at least 2 years, and then you can apply to CRNA school. And as of the year 2025, all new CRNA candidates must graduate from a doctoral level program accredited by the Council on Accreditation of Nurse Anesthesia Educational Programs. These programs typically last 3 to 4 years and reward you with either a Doctor of Nursing Practice or DNP with a concentration in nurse anesthesia, or a Doctor of Nurse Anesthesia Practice or DNAP. Now lastly, we have Certified Anesthesiology Assistants or CAAs. In the history of anesthesia providers, CAAs are the newest members of the anesthesia care team, with the position only coming into existence in the late 1960s. In terms of roles and responsibilities, CAAs have the equivalent to the role of a CRNA in the anesthesia care team model. They can administer and manage anesthesia and perform procedures, but the key distinction is that they must work within the anesthesia care team model under an anesthesiologist. CAAs do not have any sort of independent practice. Additionally, CAAs have the least career flexibility out of the 3 options. To start off, their training is highly specialized. They can't work outside of anesthesia. And the use of CAAs in the United States is actually fairly limited. So if you want to practice in a certain state, then you actually need to go and check to make sure that CAAs are allowed to practice in that state. As of November 2025, CAAs can only work in 24 jurisdictions in the United States. So between CRNAs and CAAs, although the day-to-day work is similar, there are key differences between the flexibility and the autonomy. That being said, CAA is the shortest route into a career in anesthesia. To become a certified anesthesiology assistant, you must earn a 4-year bachelor's degree and complete a 24 to 48-month CAA program. Of note, some CAA programs will require at least 8 hours of shadowing an anesthesiologist, and some programs also might require you to take the MCAT, so keep that in mind. Now the part that everyone has been waiting for, the compensation. So I'm gonna go ahead and log into merithealth.com and we're gonna look up anesthesiologists first. So as you can see from this screen, the average anesthesiologist salary in the United States is about $541,000 per year, with the bottom 5% of earners earning about $380,000 per year and the top 5% earning more than $750,000 per year. If we look under the inside the averages section, you can see that these salaries are for working an average of about 48 hours per week, and that's with about 8 weeks of PTO. Now, what you can make as an anesthesiologist depends, of course, on several factors, such as where you're actually practicing, your call schedule. So for example, you can see this anesthesiologist in Phoenix, Arizona is working about 44 hours per week, making $450,000 per year, and they are not taking any call whatsoever. But if you scroll down to this anesthesiologist that's working in Fort Wayne, they are working about 70 hours a week. They are working a 1 to 3 call schedule, but they are making nearly $1 million per year. Now, something I love about Merit is if you click on any of these salaries, you get a much more detailed breakdown of the responsibilities, workload, benefits. And so you get all of this right here in one single shot. And another thing I love about Merit is that if you keep scrolling down, you'll actually see these salary trends, which essentially helps you make sense of the data. So as you can see, academic anesthesiologists are making less than their non-academic counterparts because, of course, they're not having to split their time between academics and practice. You can also get a snapshot of what your salary might look like if you were to subspecialize. You can also get an idea of your earning potential based off of the health system or hospital that you work at, the medical group, self-employment, if you work in the government or military sector. And again, all these different comparisons are very, very helpful when you're trying to determine how much you're gonna be able to earn as an anesthesiologist. For example, you'll see that self-employed anesthesiologists make more. However, you tend to be more responsible for your liability insurance and other costs if you decide to be a self-employed anesthesiologist. You can also go over to the compensation model tab and see how your salary might vary depending on the compensation model that you sign a contract for, which for me is interesting because I will be signing contracts in about 2 years when I am looking for my first anesthesiologist job, and those contracts are gonna have different compensation models, such as a salary plus bonus, hourly, productivity based, and this is just really helpful to get an idea of what these different models might actually look like. Because this is really something that is not taught very well in school at all, because of course you're focused more on your training than you are on revenue, right? You're not making any extra money in residency, you're not on a productivity model or anything. So a lot of residents don't spend that extra time learning these things until they start signing their first job contracts. Speaking of contracts, we are gonna do a video in the future where we actually break down an example of a contract, and I think that's gonna be a lot of fun. Now you can actually scroll down and see the differences in pay depending on if you decide to subspecialize in a certain subspecialty under anesthesiology. What's interesting about anesthesiology versus other medical specialties, however, is that you typically don't have much of an increased earning potential. In fact, some specialties within anesthesiology will actually result in you making less than if you were to just do general anesthesiology. For example, if you subspecialize in critical care, you are actually going to earn on average $12,000 less per year. Now, of course, compensation isn't everything, but it is something you need to consider if you've already done over a decade worth of training and now you're considering doing fellowship, but doing that 1 year of fellowship has a $500,000 opportunity cost. Now, the next breakdown you can see is the location breakdown, which breaks down different areas in the United States. And as you can see, the Plains region has the highest earning potential, but overall, it's kind of roughly the same across the board. What's really cool about Merit is they even break things down to the cost of living, which again, it's just really cool to have all this information in one place. Okay, let's jump to CRNA salaries. As you can see from the CRNA page on Merit, the average CRNA earns a salary of about $269,000 per year. But they also have quite a range of earning potentials. For example, the bottom 5% earns an average of $190,000 per year. The top 5% earns an average of $404,000 per year. And this is for an average workload of 40 hours per week with about 6 weeks of PTO. Now, just like anesthesiologists, there's salary trends for CRNAs, and this is different for academic versus non-academic CRNAs, different employer types. They also have different compensation models, tax statuses. This one's really interesting that W-2 CRNAs earn on average $265,000 per year, and 1099 CRNAs earn on average $325,000 per year. If you scroll down to demographics, you'll even see that years of experience matters for CRNAs. So newer CRNAs are earning closer to $254,000 per year, and CRNAs that have been working for over 10, 11 years are earning closer to $288,000 per year. And then of course you have different earning potentials depending on the location. So you can see all this data here as well. What's interesting about the location breakdown is that CRNAs working in rural environments tend to out-earn their metropolitan counterparts. And this is likely because they have increased autonomy in these rural settings. All right, so lastly, let's look at certified anesthesiology assistants. According to the Merit page, the average salary for CAAs is about $246,000 per year. And this is for working an average of about 40 hours per week as well, with about 6 to 7 weeks of PTO. So similar to CRNAs, the salary floor is close to about $190,000 per year, but the salary ceiling is much lower than CRNAs at about $325,000 per year. And this is probably because of the fact that CAAs cannot practice independently at all, while CRNAs can. And if we go down to the salary trends, you'll actually see much less variation in CAA salaries compared to CRNA salaries. For example, academic and non-academic CAAs essentially earn the same amount. When you look at the employer type, again, very similar. The compensation models are even very similar. And the only difference you really see is in the years of experience, where more experienced CAAs are out earning their newer counterparts. And if you scroll down to the location breakdown, it's pretty similar across the board besides the West region having a lower salary. You can even see that most of the salaries are coming from the Southeast and Atlantic Islands, the Midwest, and there's not a lot of salary data for the Western region. And this is because, again, like we said earlier, CAAs are much more limited in the amount of states that they can practice in. Now, before I get into the key takeaways of this video, I want to tell you a little bit more about Merit. Fitting with the theme of this video, Merit was actually created by an anesthesiologist who's on a mission to democratize salary transparency. All of the salary data on Merit is anonymous. It comes directly from real verified clinicians. It's free and always will be, no subscriptions or paywalls. It helps you not only benchmark your own pay against what your peers are earning, but also see what's possible in terms of the range that you can earn depending on the setting, compensation model, hours, etc. Whether you're in training, negotiating your first contract, or just generally curious about what others in your field are making, I highly recommend that you check out Merit. And if you're already practicing, then you should go and add your own data, because it really helps add to the culture of salary transparency that we really need in the healthcare field. Merit has also recently added a new job search feature to help you land your next job. All you have to do is scroll over to this jobs tab, and you can see different listings already. But I can look up my specialty, anesthesiology. You can choose what locations you want to work in, what type of job you want, whether it's part-time, full-time, per diem, locums. And then within that job posting, you get a total breakdown of the responsibilities, the compensation, the requirements, the schedule. They even give you community information. So things like the population, the housing market. You can get an idea of what the schools look like, what the lifestyle in that city looks like. This is incredibly comprehensive and you really can't find this level of detail anywhere else. And if you're interested in any of the job postings, you literally just click express interest and then the employer will reach out to you. This is a feature I'm definitely gonna be using over the next few years, especially as I get closer to finishing up residency and start looking for my first attending job. All in all, Merit has been an incredible resource for me and is only going to be even more important as I progress through my training. So make sure to check out Merit at merithealth.com, and thank you so much again to Merit for once again partnering up with me on this video. So now that we've covered all three of these careers in detail, which one is right for you? At the end of the day, if you decided on a career in anesthesia, you can't go wrong with any of these different professions. They are all important members of the healthcare team, especially the anesthesia care team model, and we love working together. With that said, it comes down to what you value the most. If you want to be the expert in the field, the person that everyone goes to when things go wrong and need to know what to do, then I would say go to medical school and become an anesthesiologist. On the other hand, if you don't want the responsibilities and independence of an anesthesiologist, or you're a bit further along in your academic career or just your life in general, then maybe being a CRNA or a CAA is the right path for you. If you're already a registered nurse and you're looking for the next step in your career, then being a CRNA might be a great option. On the other hand, if you're not in your career whatsoever yet, maybe you're still in college and you want to get into anesthesia, then becoming a CAA might be the right path for you. In addition to training, you also need to think about your life within the field. So for example, anesthesiologists work on average 10 more hours per week compared to CRNAs and CAAs. And over the course of your entire career, that 10 hours a week really adds up. And of course, anesthesiologists ultimately have higher responsibilities under the anesthesia care team model. And so you have to consider that when you're deciding on one of these specialties. Of course, every career has trade-offs. There's no perfect fit for anyone. It really just comes down to what you value most. I feel like you can't go wrong with any of these professions. You just have to determine what you want your life to look like. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. I read through all of your guys' comments and I really appreciate the helpful insights. I also think it's helpful for people that are trying to make this decision to hear from others that are already in their careers. And so if you're an anesthesiologist, CRNA, or CAA, I definitely would love if you guys could comment your experience in the comment section below. And if you're just generally interested in anesthesiology, then I would really appreciate it if you guys subscribe to the channel. Some of you guys know this, but I post vlogs every single Sunday of my life as a resident and eventually my career as an anesthesiologist. So if you're just curious about what all this looks like, then drop a sub. Anyway, that's all I got for today. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.